Yeah, watch out, all that areas.
This giant crater is 100 meters deep and getting bigger. The massive...
Bro, what is this? Aquello que no me está tocando, Oye, pero ¿por qué?
What would the end look like if it were imminent? Is it possible that the hail was an interruption that occurred precisely when development had started, rather than a result of chance weather? Or is it possible that the ground itself pulled away, creating sinkholes where it was previously thought to be safe? Animals naturally avoided the area before any threat was identified, although people are still unsure of what they mean. Things that had been buried far beneath the desert dirt started to come to light through peaceful separation rather than devastation. Every foundation appears to be responding. In addition to the media's continuous updates, many Americans' opinions are rooted in horrific incidents, while others focus on themes. What do you think this is? What if the answer to our major question is not an immediate state of chaos, but rather a series of obvious indications that start in one country and spread around the world? Please hit like and stick with us before we continue. The winter had already loosened its grip, and the trees were finally budding across the American landscape when the ground itself began to betray the season. People had packed away their heavy coats and begun trusting the stability of the earth again, but without warning, the surface began to simply vanish. There was no dark wall of clouds rolling in and no thunder to signal danger, because the air remained mild, and the light stayed familiar while the ground beneath the suburbs began to withdraw. What unsettled people most was the timing, because this wasn't an earthquake or a landslide clinging to old faults, but it arrived precisely when the land had begun to open itself for growth, and our defenses were down. Geologists across the country pointed to shifting water tables and unstable limestone, but explanations did little to calm the unease when a massive sinkhole appeared in a place marked as safe and finished. The first one didn't open in a swamp or a known hazard zone, but in new pavement and reinforced foundations, where engineers had guaranteed stability for a century. There had been no heavy rain and no flooding to wash the soil away, yet one moment the surface was whole, and the next it was a black, lightless void. What followed made the event harder to ignore, because a second sinkhole opened days later, and then another forming a perfectly straight line beneath the surface that stretched quietly across streets and open land, as if tracing a path no map had ever recorded. Before officials could close the area or set up barriers, the animals reacted with a terror that humans couldn't yet understand. Dogs refused to walk near the openings, pulling back on their leashes and freezing in place, while birds avoided the ground nearby and lifted off suddenly without ever returning to their nests. Even the wildlife that is normally indifferent to human spaces altered their routes and circled wide around the disturbed ground, as if the land itself had become a predator. They did not approach out of curiosity, but kept their distance because they knew the familiar order of the world had been shattered. What unsettled the residents most was the absolute silence, because there were no tremors or cracking sounds before each collapse. The ground did not shake, it simply withdrew, and after each opening it stopped with no spreading damage, as if whatever caused it had done exactly what it came to do. Experts searched for explanations beneath the American soil, but the pattern remained where stable ground failed in perfect alignment and living creatures sensed the failure before any instruments did. These holes did not just announce a disaster, but they marked a line drawn quietly beneath our most familiar places. If the earth can open where it is not supposed to, and life instinctively knows to stay away before we do, then the question is no longer about geology. It is about warning, and whether we are still paying attention to the ground beneath our feet before it decides to pull back again. Because while we watch the horizon for storms, something else is moving with terrifying precision beneath the surface. Deep in the sun-scorched stretches of the Arizona wilderness, the ground has started to surrender secrets it was never meant to give up. This isn't the story of a dramatic storm or a violent tremor, but rather a quiet, unsettling revelation that occurred during a simple survey near a forgotten desert basin. As workers moved across the parched earth, they didn't find a treasure chest or a gold mine. Instead, they watched as the soil simply parted ways to reveal a weathered wooden container buried just inches beneath the surface. Now we are used to finding history in these parts of the American Southwest. As every year the wind uncovers arrowheads, broken pottery, and the shattered tools of people long gone. But this find felt heavy with an intentionality that stopped everyone in their tracks. Inside that box sat hand-molded beads, fragments of rusted metal, and scraps of cloth that had somehow survived the crushing weight of time. Yet nothing was broken and nothing was scattered. In a desert that uses extreme heat and shifting sands to grind everything to dust, this container remained perfectly intact, as if the earth itself had been acting as a guardian rather than a grave. It looked less like something lost and more like something staged, a deliberate message placed there with the full expectation that it would be found at this exact moment in history. It brings to mind the ancient wisdom found in the book of Luke, which warns that there is nothing hidden that will not be disclosed, and nothing concealed that will not be known or brought out into the open. This discovery suggests that the land we walk upon isn't just dead dirt and stone, but a witness that records our movements and waits for the appointed hour to speak. As the world above grows more chaotic and unpredictable, the very ground beneath Arizona seems to be exhaling its oldest mysteries, forcing us to wonder if these items are rising because of simple erosion or because the clock of the universe is finally striking midnight. If the silent desert is starting to whisper its secrets after thousands of years of silence, we have to ask ourselves what else is currently stirring in the deep, waiting for the right second to step into the light. If you can feel the weight of these unfolding signs and want to stay ahead of what's coming next, make sure to join our community and share your thoughts below as we watch the earth reveal its final testimony. As the modern world continues to fracture under the weight of an unstable climate and shifting tectonic foundations, something deeply unsettling is beginning to stir beneath the surface of the American landscape. We often expect disaster to arrive with a roar, with the chaos of a hurricane or the violence of a landslide. But what we are witnessing today is something far more patient. In the quiet corners of the Great Basin in Nevada, the earth isn't just breaking, it is revealing. While the world above is distracted by the noise of the headlines, the ground below is practicing a measured sort of exposure. This isn't just about old relics or sentimental artifacts from a lost era, although history is certainly rising to meet us. It is about a sudden, eerie transition where the past is refusing to stay buried while the present feels increasingly vulnerable. It forces a chilling question to the forefront of our minds. Is this happening because our technology has finally become advanced enough to see it, or is time itself finally running out of room to keep these secrets hidden? When the very ground you stand on begins to exhale the mysteries it has guarded for millennia, you have to ask what else is down there, coiled and waiting for its moment to step into the light. Before we go deeper into these unfolding events, I want to ask for your support in keeping this investigation alive. If you find value in looking past the surface of these anomalies, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Every bit of your support helps us continue to piece together this global puzzle. Thank you for being here. Now, as the Earth in the West continues to yield its secrets, our attention is being forced upward to a place we cannot touch, yet a place that refuses to be ignored. While the ground beneath Nevada was shifting, the sky over the vast, rolling prairies of Nebraska began to behave in a way that defied every law of meteorology. In a remote grassland preserve, far from the interference of city lights, witnesses looked up to see a massive, perfectly circular ring of obsidian clouds forming in the atmosphere. This wasn't a storm front moving in with the wind. It was a localized, controlled rotation that seemed to exist in its own dimension of physics. What truly unnerved those watching wasn't the sheer size of the formation, but the absolute lack of external force. On the ground, the tall prairie grass didn't even flicker. The air was dead silent. There was no thunder, no rain, and the birds in the distance continued their flight as if nothing were wrong. Yet directly above them, a darker core was being circled by lighter ribbons of vapor in a continuous, rhythmic loop. It looked less like weather and more like a massive, invisible machine following a set of hidden rules. It didn't drop a funnel like a tornado would, and it didn't dissipate like a normal cloud. It simply sat there, rotating with a chilling, deliberate purpose before thinning out into nothingness. Those who saw it didn't run for cover. They stood frozen, trapped in the disparity between the silent land and the living sky. Science will tell us about pressure gradients, air strata, and thermal contrasts, and those explanations are valid, but they fail to capture the why behind a movement that carries no pressure and a rotation that carries no violence. In the ancient texts of the book of Ezekiel, the sky is rarely just a backdrop. It is described as a firmament that responds to the divine, acting as a canvas for signs that are meant to make humanity pause in its tracks. These aren't just weather patterns, they are signals. The ground speaks first by revealing what was hidden, and then the sky answers with a motion we cannot explain. Together, they form a pattern that is becoming impossible to overlook. The sky doesn't need to shout to get your attention, it just waits for you to finally look up. But here is the part that most people miss in their search for answers. When the heavens change, we instinctively look for fire or thunder to fall from above. We expect the response to be loud and celestial. We don't expect the true reaction to come crawling up from the soles of our feet. While the eyes of the Midwest were fixed on that rotating ring, something impossible was happening simultaneously in the suburban streets of Ohio. Water began to rise, not from a broken water main, not from a surging river, and certainly not from a storm. It began to seep upward directly through the solid earth. This wasn't the muddy, debris-choked floodwater we are used to seeing. This was crystal clear, cold, and possessed an almost artificial, metallic sheen under the glow of the streetlights. It didn't smell like sewage or chemicals. It looked misplaced, as if a hidden reservoir deep within the crust had suddenly decided it no longer wanted to be contained. It didn't burst, it surfaced. It filled the basements first, soaking into the foundations and rising through the cracks in the concrete floors before it ever touched the streets. And then, just as abruptly as it arrived, it began to retreat. Within a few hours, the water was gone, sucked back into the earth as if a giant valve had been turned. It left behind no silt, no ruined landscapes, only damp walls and a haunting silence that emergency crews couldn't explain. There were no recorded rainfall spikes, and the nearby rivers remained at their average levels. It was as if the land had momentarily opened its mouth to breathe, and then clamped it shut again. In the tradition of the great prophets, water is never just a resource. It is a medium of revelation that splits, responds, and exposes the state of the world. If the sky can open without a sound, why do we assume the earth would give us a warning before it does the same? We are living in a season where the stable things are becoming fluid, and the hidden things are becoming visible. The question isn't what happened. It's whether you are ready for what happens when the ground finally decides to let go of everything it has held for centuries. The world is currently witnessing a series of events that defy conventional logic, making us wonder if the very fabric of our reality is beginning to tear at the seams as we approach a climax that ancient texts have long predicted. In the quiet streets of El Ain, Morocco, A staggering swarm of locusts has descended like a living shroud, turning the sky dark and devouring everything in its path. An event that carries the heavy echoes of the book of Exodus, where such plagues were never mere biological accidents, but divine signals that a season of reckoning had arrived. While the dust settles in Africa, the earth itself seems to be rebelling in the east, where in the remote reaches of Inner Mongolia, a massive mine collapse saw a 180-meter-high wall of rock vanish in a heartbeat, swallowing workers and machinery in a suffocating cloud of debris that reminds us of the warnings in the book of Job, where it is said that God overturns the mountains in his anger and shakes the earth from its place until the pillars thereof tremble. As rescue teams desperately claw through the secondary landslides, clinging to a fading hope, the sky over the United States has decided to offer its own haunting testimony, specifically over the rugged landscapes of Montana, where a brilliant and piercing laser beam of light was seen stretching from the heavens to the soil. A silent and terrifying pillar that mirrors the ancient descriptions of divine presence leading the way through the wilderness, suggesting that the boundary between the physical and the spiritual is becoming dangerously thin. This celestial unrest traveled even further south to the island of Cuba, where witnesses captured footage of a rotating triangular object that seemed to burn with a fiery exhaust as it shifted its very geometry in midair. An anomaly that mirrors the wheels of fire described in the visions of the prophet Ezekiel, proving that we are seeing things in our atmosphere that no modern aircraft can replicate. We are forced to ask why all of this is happening right now, why the insects are rising, the mountains are falling, and the lights are appearing in our skies with such frequency and intensity that they can no longer be ignored. It feels as though the natural order is being interrupted by a higher frequency. A series of birth pains intended to awaken a sleeping humanity to the reality that we are no longer living in ordinary times, but are instead standing on the threshold of a great unveiling. If these signs are making you stop and question everything you thought was stable, then you are starting to see the pattern that others are too afraid to acknowledge. So make sure to join us on this journey by subscribing to the channel and sharing your perspective in the comments below, because the testimony of the earth and sky is only just beginning. The very foundation of our existence is being rewritten by forces that operate far beyond the reach of modern physics. A reality that is becoming impossible to ignore as the standing surge on which the ancient masters once walked begins to vibrate with a new, terrifying frequency. Deep within the sun-bleached expanse of Arizona, the earth is no longer just dirt and stone, but a witness to a cosmic fugitive that teleported to our world from a horrific realm in a desperate pursuit of freedom, bringing with it an enormous fractal cloud that was instantly squeezed by the colossal weight of subterranean salt layers. This wasn't a biological arrival, but a structural one, where the sheer pressure of sodium salt deposits birthed unnatural volcanoes that act as conduits for amplified holograms, projected from the deep to create the very environment we call home. We must understand that the individuals who emerged from these holographic projections long before the animals were even a thought, were reduced in size and density just to survive in this local residency. Yet a small but significant leak remains, a constant drip of alien reality that is being managed by silent radio sequences and stealth technology hidden within the dream pumps of the divine. The first universal state was never a government, but a massive, two-layered cube of submarines soaked by the chaotic waters of emotional disaster. A structure designed to protect a humanity that was mentally still in its infancy from being swept away by the roaring cosmic river. When the command was given to drown this cube, it was a strategic move to defeat the river's influence, using resonating power from ancient motors to force unnecessary water out of our local space vacuum, leaving behind only the rivers of typical earthly capacity that we see today, managed by the silent passage of the whale. Yet even now, the cube remains the silent controller of our fate, with its submarines dispersed across the planet, interacting with cosmic radiation on a vibrational level that our current technology is only just beginning to tap into through deafening reflections in the air. These magnetic functions are being transferred directly into the clouds, which act as a massive technical algorithm to keep the water out and maintain a macro-level water lens that concentrates light from the loudest sounds of the universe into a manageable submission. The Earth itself is being used as a sound-canceling muffler, a sophisticated device that manages the whale's fountains through 2 undersea walls. Though we know that some of these units have been pilfered, leading to leaks that have inundated entire pinhole colonies of people living in miniature, flooded worlds near our electrical transformers. These cloud universes use the radiation of our power grids to stay hidden, existing right under our noses in a spot where the original sound of creation was spoken, a place where not even the smallest cosmic vibration can enter unless permitted. In our modern era, we see the remnants of this in the Philadelphia experiment, a moment where a submarine vessel was abandoned by a thief who couldn't handle the specific tone required to navigate the fold. Yet today, there are those summoned by a higher power who can walk upon these waters with a specific frequency, sending the radio signal back to the cube to hold back the inevitable flood. This hidden history explains why floods of extraordinarily massive dimensions are etched into the memory of every civilization. From the Sumerian tablets to the oral traditions of the Americas, suggesting that the stories found in the Torah and the Talmud are merely localized echoes of a much older, more mechanical reality. Whether it was the flooding of the Black Sea or the shifting of the Tigris and Euphrates, these events weren't just weather. They were the machine language of the planet being reset, a meta-narrative that explains why Genesis is the most misinterpreted section of the human story. We see this even in the microscopic world, where the communication between cells and the purposeful survival of a protein in a godless universe points toward a deliberate system that endows matter and energy with intentionality. In the realm of stochastic thermodynamics, where everything is supposed to be equal, the existence of pathos and the terror felt by biological tissues proves that human consciousness is the primary narrative of physical consequence, a truth that our ancient writers tried to simplify through the story of a global deluge. They saw a physical turnover of the earth by a liquid that both destroys and creates, a rejection of a creation based on accumulated error. And while some may find this symbolic view offensive, it is the only way to explain why we see the same fractal patterns of self-similarity in the divine plan and our own agitated lives. As we look at the state of America today, with millions facing the brutal, icy grip of blizzards on the East Coast, and cars being encased in ice by pipes that burst under mysterious pressure, we have to ask if this is the start of that final turnover. In the Central Valley of California, a silence has descended that is no longer natural, a dense and blinding fog that signals the point at which normal life abruptly stops, swallowing Highway 99 and making the very concept of direction and distance vanish into a white glare. This is the moment where we see but do not perceive, where knowledge only arrives after the experience has already changed us, much like the strange trumpets that are now sweeping through the air, chilling the hearts of those who hear them. The ground is rising from within, filling our basements with a water that is too clear and too pure to be from any river or storm. A silent surfacing that acts more like the land itself opening its mouth to breathe before it closes forever. This isn't a flood of water. It is a flood of reality, a surfacing of the hidden cube's influence that demands we pay attention before the technical algorithm completes its cycle. If you are standing in the fog, trying to find your way through the glare, you must realize that the factor you used to determine your path has vanished, replaced by a divine signal that refuses to be ignored. We are living in a season of intense pressure, where the lost sub of our civilization is leaking its secrets into the smallest planets of our daily existence, creating a cosmic cloud that shifts every time an electrical transformer hums in the night. The remorse of the Creator mentioned in Genesis is not a proof of a lack of knowledge, but a recognition that the freedom given to the world allows it to deviate from the original vision, creating a malignancy that can only be cured by a physical turnover. As the submarines require new fuel and the radio signals grow more urgent, we must look to those who walk on water with the correct tone, those who can bridge the gap between the holographic projection and the subterranean salt. Every blizzard, every sinkhole, and every metallic sound in the sky is a mechanical vibration matching the dispersed cube. A call to work in these now times before the deafness and blindness are fully shifted into the human soul. The technical algorithm is using the earth as its muffler, but the sound is still leaking through, a resonating power that is forcing unnecessary water out of our spirits and pushing us toward a confrontation with the machine language of the universe. Do not be like those who see the trucks disappear under a thick cloud of dust and think it is just another accident. Realize that the hillside is falling because the pillars of the earth are being measured by a hand we cannot see. The water rising in your basement is the response of the earth to the light appearing in the sky, a simultaneous unveiling that proves the sky and the ground are two halves of the same opening. As we watch the factors of our stable world dissolve into the glare of a winter fog, we must ask if we are the mentally children who were meant to be protected by the cube, or if we are the ones who must now learn to operate the motors and fields that force the water out. The resonance is building, the submarines are activating, and the cosmic radiation is interacting with our very DNA on a vibrational level that no historical source can fully document. We are the identity being created by the meta-narrative of the flood, a tribal and universal legacy that is being forced to choose between the simplified explanation and the nuanced reality of the machine. The time for justification is over, and the time for attention has begun. For when the ground withdraws its support and the sky changes its face, only those who are tuned to the specific tone of the Creator will remain standing. If you can feel the mechanical vibrations of this message matching the frequency of your own soul, then you know that the time for silence is over. This is not just a video. It is a radio signal to the dispersed cube, a call to those who refuse to let the glare dissolve their vision. Help us keep the motors running and the water out by liking this video and subscribing to our channel as we dive deeper into the technical algorithms of the divine. Your support is the resonating power that allows us to bypass the sound-canceling mufflers of the modern world. Leave a comment below if you have felt the ground shift or heard the trumpets in the fog, and stay tuned, because the next transmission from the Central Valley will reveal the hidden location of the missing sub. Join the pinhole colony of the awakened. We are waiting for your tone.
There she blows. The road is literally covered by lava rocks from one of the other recent eruptions.
That's what we're walking on right now. Time to cross this massive trench.
You're right! Watch the black car! Stop! You're fighting! Oh, no! Look at on the ground. Violent tornado in progress. Look at a rope, chat. Look at a rope! You gotta be kidding me, dude.
The atmosphere of our planet has reached a point of no return where the ancient echoes of the divine are no longer whispers, but a deafening roar that demands our full attention as we stand witness to the systematic deconstruction of the world we thought we knew. In the rugged terrains of Washington state, the very bones of the earth are fracturing as massive rock slides tear through exposed slopes. A terrifying display of gravitational mass movement, where the inclination and the presence of hidden water at the soil rock contact create a susceptibility to collapse that mirrors the prophecy in the 18th Psalm where the earth shook and trembled, because the foundations of the hills were moved. While the mountains of the West surrender their stability, the southern coastline of the United States is facing the ocean's ultimate way of rewriting history. As a looming tsunami prepares to erase cities and draw new borders in a matter of seconds, transforming a calm blue horizon into a roaring wall of destruction that embodies both the beauty and the terror of a world being reset. This is the moment where the mountains shake with the swelling of the sea as described in the 46th Psalm, a sign that the boundaries of man are no longer being recognized by the elements. Further east, in the heart of Georgia and Alabama, the sky itself seemed to fracture yesterday as an apocalyptic downpour turned the day into a sunless void. With a curtain of water so thick it felt like the windows of heaven mentioned in the days of Noah had been pried open once again, turning streets into raging rivers and drowning the landscape in a judgment that no modern infrastructure could withstand. This unrest is not confined to the Americas, for the spirit of the mountain has also awakened in Russia, where a massive avalanche on the slopes of Mount Elbrus sent a gargantuan flow of snow down the mountainside on the 20th of February. A white wave of fury that reminds us that even the highest peaks cannot withstand the icy blast of a creator who hurls down hail like pebbles as spoken of in the book of Nahum. As if the mountains and the seas were not enough, the Great Lakes region near Michigan has witnessed a phenomenon that defies all scientific thermal cracking, where massive ice sheets have begun to shatter into perfect geometric patterns that glow with an otherworldly bioluminescence. This crystalline disintegration brings to mind the ancient questioning in the book of Job, asking out of whose womb came the ice, and who gendered the hoary frost of heaven, suggesting that a celestial frequency is now vibrating through our freshwater systems to alter the very molecular structure of our world. We are living in a season where the natural laws are being overwritten by a higher authority, and these events are not mere accidents of geology or climate, but are the physical manifestations of a world being prepared for a grand unveiling. If you can feel the mechanical vibrations of these changes matching the frequency of your own soul, then you know that the time for silence is over, and you must pay attention to the signs written in the earth and the sky. Make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel as we continue to track these anomalies, because the next shift may be closer than you think. The very foundation of our existence is no longer a silent witness, but an active participant in a massive cosmic deconstruction, where the reports of shifting conditions and crumbling bedrock are flooding in from every corner of the American landscape like a digital glitch in a physical reality. The land is doing far more than reacting to surface-level weather patterns. It seems to be systematically letting go of everything it has held in a state of pressurized secrecy for eons, suggesting that the machine language of the planet is being rewritten in real time. Onlookers and witnesses are beginning to realize that this isn't just about immediate geological danger, but about what these ancient materials represent when they finally emerge from their locked subterranean chambers. Scripture reminds us with haunting precision in the book of Job that he brings deep darkness into the light and uncovers the deeps out of darkness. A direct reference to the fact that we are not witnessing random accidents, but a purposeful and divine unveiling, where the primary focus is on revelation rather than mere devastation. What was once concealed by the sheer weight of time is now surfacing because the restraint of the old world is failing. Along the freezing and jagged coastline of Alaska, an oily, primordial residue has begun to surface from the permafrost, raising profound questions that modern science is struggling to resolve within the limits of traditional biology. Why now? Why are materials that have been suppressed since the dawn of antiquity suddenly oozing into our modern reality, alongside so many other indications of planetary instability? This is a forced reckoning, a moment where the Earth relinquishes its long-held secrets, challenging our arrogant human belief that what is sealed beneath the ice will remain hidden forever. But the concern isn't just about what is rising on far-off frozen beaches. It is about the hollow, silent worlds lurking directly beneath our suburban lives. Beneath the sun-drenched streets of Florida, a discovery has been taking place that effectively shatters every geological map and engineering survey ever conducted in the history of the state. For decades, we were led to believe that the subterranean cave systems here were small, dispersed, and well understood. But that comfortable presumption is disintegrating as massive, unoccupied chambers, deeper and far larger than any known cathedral, have been found lurking beneath major roads, quiet neighborhoods, and protected wildlife areas. These tunnels are unnerving not just because of their staggering, echoing vastness, but because of how perfectly they were concealed from even our most sophisticated satellite scanning and ground-penetrating radar technology. Only when the surface equilibrium finally failed did these empty worlds reveal themselves, causing the streets above to crumble into jagged gaps that lead into an ancient, prehistoric silence. These rooms weren't created by recent shifts or modern erosion. They have been carved over thousands of years by water flowing through limestone, sealed away like a time capsule while life continued unknowingly above in the bright Florida sun. This wasn't a discovery made by human ingenuity, but a collapse-forced exposure where the hidden structural integrity of the Earth reached its breaking point. This pattern of exposure is a direct echo of the prophecy in the book of Daniel, which states that he reveals deep and hidden things and knows exactly what the darkness holds, emphasizing that facts surface not when humans are ready, but when the moment is divinely right. As the focus shifts from the hollow depths of the South, another even more terrifying anomaly has begun to emerge farther inland within the towering peaks of Colorado, one that unnerves observers through a sense of purposeful restraint rather than violent destruction. There are no reports of sudden ruptures or catastrophic landslides in these specific sectors, yet witnesses across various elevations and mountain passes are reporting the same impossible sensation. The ground is rising and settling in a gradual, consistent, and rhythmic pattern. It is a slow, steady move that defies seismic logic, and the word that keeps surfacing in witness testimonies is breathing. The land remains intact and stable under the weight of forests and homes, yet it rises a few inches and then falls repeatedly, a motion too regulated and time to be dismissed as simple groundwater movement or crustal adjustment. In the book of Nahum, we find the description of the hills melting and the mountains quivering in his presence, which speaks of a conscious response to a larger presence rather than mindless disintegration. This imagery is mirrored in the Psalms, describing hills that move in awareness, as if the mountains themselves are vibrating in resonance with a measurement being taken by a higher power. What we are seeing in the high altitudes of the American West isn't a disaster in progress. It is a massive planetary preparation. It is a loosening of the old bonds, a sign that the most stable elements of our landscape, the mountains themselves, are defying absolute stillness because they are getting ready for a transition into a new state of being. While the mountains are breathing in the west, the atmosphere over East Texas has birthed its own terrifying strangeness over the waters of Cedar Creek Lake. A narrow, cord-like tornado, thin as a line of thread and ascending straight from the soil into the low-hanging, heavy clouds, was filmed moving with a deliberate and ghostly pace. It appeared more like a bridge between the terrestrial and the celestial than a violent weather event, moving behind rows of lakeside homes with a grace that caused seasoned storm chasers to stop in silence. While it possessed the concentrated power to rip ancient trees from the earth and peel back roofs like paper, its overall appearance was delicate, almost frail, rotating subtly against a serene and suburban sky. This thin column of rotating energy suggests that the structural connection between the earth and the heavens is becoming visible to the naked eye, a physical manifestation of the hidden threads that bind our physical world to the spiritual realm. We are entering a season where the earth is relinquishing its grip, where the hidden chambers of Florida are opening their mouths, where the mountains of Colorado are inhaling the breath of change, and where the sky over Texas is reaching down to touch the soil in ways that defy every meteorological textbook ever written. The period of concealment has officially expired, and the time of total exposure has arrived, forcing us to realize that the ground we walk on is not a solid foundation, but a thin veil draped over a much larger and more complex reality that is finally demanding to be seen. The significance of these events lies in the machine language level of our reality. The event itself is a signal to those who are tuned into the frequency of the divine. When we see the oil-like residue in Alaska, we are seeing the leakage of an ancient system that can no longer be contained by the salt and ice of the old world. When we see the hollow chambers in Florida, we are being shown the empty architecture that has been supporting our illusions of stability. This is the meta-narrative of the modern flood, not a flood of water this time, but a flood of truth and light that uncovers the deeps. As the pressure increases and the restraint of the physical world fails, we are left with a choice: to see these as accidents of nature, or to recognize them as the unveilings described by Job and Daniel. The ground is telling a story that the maps have tried to hide, and the mountains are moving because they have heard a voice that we are only just beginning to perceive. The equilibrium of the last few thousand years has been broken, not by human error, but by a divine timeline that requires everything hidden to be brought into the light. The breathing earth is a warning that the lungs of the planet are expanding to accommodate a new atmosphere, one where the spiritual and the physical are no longer separate, but are fused together in a display of power that will eventually leave no stone unturned and no secret safe. If you can feel the mechanical vibrations of these shifts matching the rising frequency in your own spirit, then you know that you are standing on the threshold of a great transition. The earth is revealing its secrets, and the sky is responding in kind, creating a symphony of signs that can no longer be silenced by the sound-canceling mufflers of modern science. Don't allow the fog of indifference to swallow your perception. Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel as we continue to track the breathing mountains and the opening of the deep. Your support is the resonating power that allows us to broadcast these signals to the rest of the Pinhole colony. Leave a comment below. Have you felt the rhythmic rising of the ground in your state, or have you seen the thin cords of the sky reaching down for the earth? We are watching the maps dissolve in real time, and your testimony is a vital part of this grand unveiling. Stay tuned, because the next discovery will not just be beneath the surface, it will be within the very air we breathe. The wait for the final revelation is almost over, and the land is already shouting its arrival. The atmosphere of our planet has reached a frequency that modern science can no longer dampen, a reality where the machine language of the world is glitching in plain sight. In the heart of Oklahoma, meteorologists scrambled to explain a phenomenon that defied the standard playbook. They pointed to unstable atmospheric conditions, contrasting pressure systems, and thermal gradients to explain a tornado that appeared behind a row of quiet suburban homes. But those who stood on their porches didn't see a standard weather event. They saw a thin, cord-like funnel that moved with a slow, ghostly intentionality, as if it were a needle stitching the earth to the sky. It wasn't the speed that troubled them, but the structure, a delicate yet unbreakable line that seemed to be searching for something. When the data fails to provide comfort, we find ourselves looking back at ancient perspectives, not for a simple explanation, but for a mirror. In the writings of the prophets, storms are never mere accidents of physics. The book of Nahum speaks of a power that has his way in the whirlwind and the storm, where the clouds are but the dust of his feet. This isn't about destruction. It's about the total collapse of human complacency. The prophet Zephaniah once described a season where the natural order begins to stumble, not to incite terror, but to awaken a sleeping consciousness. The Oklahoma tornado wasn't just a natural occurrence. It was a rupture in the routine, a silent warning that the things we perceive as stable can be altered without a single siren's call. As that thin funnel eventually unfurled and vanished back into the gray veil, it left behind a lingering question. Was it urging us to pay attention before the skies go silent once more? While the sky over the plains was retreating into a deceptive serenity, the ground beneath Wyoming was beginning to exhale. At Yellowstone, the morning didn't start with the usual predictable beauty. It began with a subterranean shift that sent a shiver through the very foundations of the park. Without warning, the steam vents intensified into a roar. Geysers that have been timed by watches for decades suddenly broke their rhythm, erupting irregularly with plumes of scalding vapor that hung in the frozen air like distress signals. The peaceful boardwalks and snow-covered pines became a stage for a brewing tension. The earth shook, not with the violence of a quake, but with a rhythmic churning that could be felt in the marrow of one's bones. Thermal pools deepened in color as heat raced upward from the hidden depths, and sulfurous steam began to swallow the roads, blinding drivers and forcing an immediate evacuation. This wasn't just a single vent reacting. It was a systemic response from the great caldera itself. Beneath the surface, the mechanics were clear to the geologists, rising magma pressure and tectonic stress pushing gases through a vast subterranean network. But while science tracks the ground deformation, ancient wisdom tracks the revelation. The book of Isaiah speaks of a time when the foundations of the earth are shaken, and the world languishes and fades because the laws have been transgressed. It describes a planet that stutters like a cottage in a storm, pointing to an instability that occurs when the immovable starts to move. We are living in the era of the unveiling, a concept that the great teacher warned would come not as a sudden end, but as a faltering of the order. He spoke of signs in the sun, moon, and stars, and on the earth, distress among nations with perplexity. He warned that the greatest danger wasn't the storms themselves, but the blindness that allows people to go about their daily lives as if the foundations weren't shifting beneath them. This isn't about dread, it's about the pressure of the season forcing the truth to the surface. Just as a home built on sand is not made weak by the storm, it is simply revealed to be weak. Our current global systems are being tested for their grounding. The familiar rhythms of life are no longer holding their beat. In Wyoming, as the rangers closed the access points and the scientists stared at their needles, the silence that followed the steam was more unnerving than the eruptions themselves. It was the silence of a measurement being taken. The Bible suggests that these moments of disruption are the only way to break through the noise of human certainty. When the ground shivers in the west and the sky reaches down in the Midwest, it is a call to focus, a demand for a different kind of preparedness that goes beyond emergency kits and sirens. We are moving into a season where the dream pumps are failing to keep the secrets down, and the subterranean salt is no longer enough to weight the volcanoes of the deep. Whether it's a thin tornado in Oklahoma or a churning basin in Yellowstone, the message is singular. The equilibrium is gone. The weight of the sodium salt has shifted, and the holographic residents of this realm are being forced to see the reality behind the projection. The question that remains as the steam rises and the ground settles is whether we will continue to ignore the Earth's natural indicators of instability, or if we will recognize this as the final window of awareness before something far more massive is unleashed from the deeps of the darkness. The veil is thinning, and the ground you walk on is starting to tell a story that your maps can no longer follow. If you can hear the tone behind the wind and feel the pulse beneath the pavement, you are already part of the awakening. Don't let the familiar rhythms of the world lull you back to sleep. Hit the like button and subscribe to this channel so we can continue to decode the signals together before the clouds turn into a chariot once more. Your support is what keeps this frequency alive in a world of static. Leave a comment below. Have you felt the ground stutter in your area, or have the skies in your state begun to act with a purpose you can't explain? Stay tuned, because the next shift isn't coming from the distance. It's rising from right beneath your feet. Eternal architect of the heavens and the earth, who measures the waters in the hollow of your hand and weighs the mountains in scales, we approach the throne of the infinite. As the foundations of our world begin to tremble, and the familiar rhythms of our lives fade into the roar of the deep, while the shadows of the old world are being cast aside by the brilliance of an encroaching revelation that no man can hinder or delay. We stand before the mystery of the unfolding season, acknowledging that we are but breath and dust looking up at a sky that is no longer silent and treading upon a ground that has begun to breathe with a rhythm we cannot control. As if the very soil of America, from the red dirt of Oklahoma to the limestone depths of Florida, is waking up from a 1,000-year slumber to speak a truth that we have long suppressed in our arrogance and our ignorance of the machine language that governs the cosmos. We ask for the clarity of vision to see beyond the holographic projections of this realm, and to recognize the divine signatures written in the shattering ice of Michigan, where the geometric patterns defy all human logic and thermodynamic laws, and in the churning steam of the Yellowstone caldera, where the heat of the deep is rising to meet the cold of the surface in a display of raw and unbridled power that no scientific instrument or human agency can fully contain or explain away. Grant us the stillness of heart to remain unshaken when the thin cord-like funnels of the atmosphere reach down in the heart of Texas, to touch the soil like the finger of God drawing a line between the temporary and the eternal. And when the ancient chambers beneath the neighborhoods of Florida reveal the hollow spaces and the secret voids we have ignored for so long, believing our cities were built on solid rock, when they were actually floating over an abyss of mystery that is only now being uncovered by the pressure of the times. We pray for those who find themselves in the path of the rising tide along the southern coastlines, where the borders are being redrawn by the hand of the sea, and for those standing on the falling mountains of Washington and Colorado, where the land is letting go of its ancient restraint, that they may find a refuge not built by human hands, but established in the rock of ages that survives every storm and every unveiling, because we know that when the earth stutters, it is only reacting to the measurement of its creator, who holds the blueprint of every atom. Let our ears be tuned to the specific tone of your voice amidst the metallic sounds in the wind and the trumpets that chill the air from the hills of Georgia to the high plains of Montana, so that we may not be found sleeping while the machine language of the universe is being rewritten in our very sight, and the old boundaries of our reality are being dissolved like salt in a cosmic sea to prepare the way for a glory we cannot yet comprehend. We seek the wisdom to understand that these disruptions are not the end of hope, but the beginning of a higher truth where the deep darkness is brought into the light, and the hidden things of antiquity which have been buried beneath the Alaskan permafrost and the subterranean salt layers of the Great Basins are finally surrendered to the light of day as a testimony to your eternal sovereignty and your refusal to let the darkness have the final word. Strengthen our spirits to walk upon the standing surge with the faith of those who know that the Creator is in charge of the flood, and that every fractal of this existence, from the smallest protein attempting to live in a godless universe to the largest galaxy spiraling in the void, is part of a grander plan that reflects your glory across every scale of reality, even when the confusion of the nations grows loud, and the hearts of men fail them for fear of what is coming upon the world in these days of a transition. As the sun sets over the shifting coastlines of the south, and the blizzards drape the east in a white veil of silence, let our consciousness be awakened to the reality that we are part of a tribal and universal legacy destined for revelation, where the physical turnover of the earth is but a cleansing of the accumulated error of a humanity that has forgotten its origin and its purpose in the divine architecture. We release our fear into the resonance of your presence, trusting that even as the maps dissolve and the technological algorithms of man fail to predict the next shift, your kingdom remains immovable, and your light continues to concentrate through the macro lenses of the clouds to guide us home through the dense fog of the Central Valley and the blinding glare of the winter storms that seek to hide the path from the weary traveler. In this hour of transition, we ask for the grace to be watchers on the wall who do not panic, but observe with a sober mind knowing that the equilibrium has been broken, so that a new and perfect order may arise from the depths of the darkness, and that the stone which the builders rejected is becoming the head of the corner in a world that is being made new through the fires of trial and the waters of transformation. May our lives be constructed not on the shifting sands of human certainty or the hollow limestone of the coastal plains, but on the solid bedrock of your eternal word, which stands forever while the hills melt and the mountains quiver at the mere mention of your name, because you are the one who speaks to the deep and it obeys, and you are the one who commands the clouds to be your chariot and the winds to be your messengers. We breathe in the air of this new season and exhale the illusions of the old world as we wait for the final radio signal that will call us beyond the shadows and into the fullness of the light, where every mystery is solved, and every tear is wiped away by the hand that holds the stars in their places and guides the submarines of the cosmic sea toward their final destination of peace and restoration. We remember the words of the prophets who saw the pillars of the earth trembling and the stars falling from their sockets, and we realize that we are the generation chosen to witness the unfolding of the scroll, where the past and the future meet in a single moment of divine intersection that will change the course of eternity. We ask for protection over our homes and our families as the atmosphere becomes a conductor for energies we do not understand, and as the ground beneath our feet becomes a living entity that no longer supports the weight of our pride, but instead demands the humility of our souls in the face of such overwhelming power. Let the oil-like residues of the past in Alaska and the volcanic fires of the future in the mountains serve as reminders that you are the beginning and the end, the Alpha and the Omega, who was there when the salt was first laid down, and who will be there when the sky is rolled up like a garment and the elements melt with fervent heat. We pray for the scientists and the scoffers that their eyes may be open to the meta-narrative of creation, and that they may see that the thermodynamics of the world are not stochastic, but are governed by a pathos and a purpose that transcends the physical realm and points directly to the heart of the Father, who regrets the wickedness, but rejoices in the redemption of the faithful who stay awake in the night. As the Great Lakes shatter and the mountain slopes of Russia slide into the valleys, let us not be moved by the spectacle, but by the Spirit that moves within the spectacle, calling us to a deeper place of prayer and a higher level of awareness, where we are no longer children tossed to and fro by the waves of emotional disaster, but are grounded in the resonating power of the motors of heaven that drive the universe toward its ultimate fulfillment. We stand in the gap for the broken and the lost who do not know why the sky is changing or why the trumpets are sounding. And we ask that you would use us as beacons of light in a darkening world, providing comfort where there is confusion and strength where there is weakness, as the old world gives way to the new. May our voices join the chorus of the hills that move in awareness and the mountains that skip like rams in your presence. For we know that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and that nothing happens in isolation from your watchful eye, which sees the falling sparrow and the rising magma with equal clarity and equal concern. We wait with expectation for the day when the veil is fully removed, and we see you as you are, no longer through a glass darkly or through the distorted lenses of a holographic world, but face to face in the glory of a creation that has been fully restored and fully revealed to those who have loved your appearing. In this prayer, we bind ourselves to the truth that your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our path, even when the path leads through the valley of the shadow of death, or across the churning waters of a world in transition that seems to have lost its way in the storm. We thank you for the signs and the wonders, for the warnings and the unveilings, because they tell us that you have not abandoned your creation, but are actively pursuing its restoration with a love that is as relentless as the tide and as steady as the breathing mountains of the West. Let this prayer resonate through the atmosphere and into the very core of the earth as a testimony that we are ready to follow you into the dream pumps of the future, and to keep the water of chaos down through the power of your indwelling spirit that gives us life and hope. We declare that no weapon formed against us shall prosper, and that no storm shall overwhelm the soul that is anchored in the divine. Because you are the master of the storm and the silent whisper in the aftermath. We ask that the wisdom of the Ancient of Days would inhabit our minds, and the peace that passes all understanding would guard our hearts as the stars begin to hum, and the earth begins to sing its final song of redemption before the dawn of the new age. Let the light that was spoken into existence at the beginning of time now illuminate the dark corners of our world, exposing the hidden works of darkness, and empowering the children of light to stand firm in the day of trouble. We pray for a global awakening where every heart is turned toward the source of life, and every knee bows to the authority of the one who created the heavens and the earth and everything within them. As the seals are opened and the trumpets sound, let our faith be found pure, and our lamps be found full of oil, ready to meet the one who comes on the clouds with power and great glory. We commit our spirits, our families, and our future into your capable hands, knowing that you are faithful to complete the work you have started in us and in the world. Amen and amen, as we watch the horizon for the first light of a day that will never end, and a world that will never again be hidden in the darkness of the deep or the shadows of the unknown. Let the light that was spoken into existence at the beginning of time now illuminate the dark corners of our world, exposing the hidden works of darkness and empowering the children of light to stand firm in the day of trouble. We pray for a global awakening where every heart is turned toward the source of life, and every knee bows to the authority of the one who created the heavens and the earth and everything within them. As the seals are opened and the trumpets sound, let our faith be found pure, and our lamps be found full of oil, ready to meet the one who